The war entered its third year, and for the first time Council worlds began to feel real fear. The fighting was no longer confined to distant colonies in contested space. Now the war came home. Jinwu crouched in the maintenance tunnel beneath the orbital shipyards of Viridian Prime, the homeworld of Ambassador Thalrex and the heart of the Council's military production. Getting here had taken 8 months of careful planning, forged documents, and a willingness to do whatever was necessary. His team consisted of 5 other humans, all specialists in sabotage and demolition. They had traveled to Viridian Prime disguised as migrant workers from a neutral species, their DNA altered enough to pass basic scans. Living among the enemy pretending to be something they were not had been harder than any battle. "Charges are set," whispered Mirai, the team's explosives expert. "We have 20 minutes to get clear." "Make it 30, Jinwu said. "I want to be sure we hit the shift change." "Maximum casualties," Mirai nodded and adjusted the timers. None of them spoke about the fact that thousands of innocent shipyard workers would die in the explosion. Innocence was a luxury that had died with the first orbital bombardment of human cities. They made their way through the service tunnels to their extraction point, a cargo ship that would smuggle them off-planet. As they moved, Jinwu thought about his family, about the wife and son he had left behind on Earth 4 years ago. He wondered if they were still alive. The explosion tore through 3 orbital platforms simultaneously. The shipyards, which produced 1/4 of the Council's military vessels, were utterly destroyed. 12,000 workers died instantly. The economic damage ran into trillions of credits. Jinwu and his team escaped, but barely. As their ship jumped to faster than light speed, Jinwu allowed himself a small smile. It was not enough. It would never be enough, but it was something. While Jinwu's team struck at military targets, another human named Nari worked on something far more subtle and dangerous. She had infiltrated the Council headquarters itself, posing as a junior aide to a minor ambassador from a species that looked vaguely human. For 6 months, she had worked in the building, filing reports and attending meetings, all while gathering intelligence about Council military deployments and political divisions. Nobody suspected the quiet aide who always kept her head down and never caused trouble. Today, she sat in on a high-level strategy meeting. She watched as Council military planners discussed their next offensive against human space. They were planning to strike at Mars, humanity's second most important world. "The attack will commence in 40 days, the military coordinator said. "We will deploy the 6th and 8th fleets along with planet-killer weapons. Mars will be reduced to lifeless rock." Nari kept her expression neutral, but inside her heart raced. This information had to reach Earth immediately. That night, she used a quantum communicator hidden in her quarters to send an encrypted burst transmission. But someone had been watching. Security forces stormed her room minutes after the transmission. They found her burning documents and preparing to take a suicide pill. "You are human," the security chief said, studying her with fascination. "You have lived among us for months. How did you fool our scanners?" Nari smiled. "You still do not understand us. We are the most adaptable species in the galaxy. We can survive anywhere, live among anyone, become whatever we need to be. That is what persistence hunters do." She bit down on the pill before they could stop her. The poison acted in seconds. Her last thought was satisfaction that the information about Mars had reached Earth in time. The Council interrogated her corpse with every technology they had, desperate to understand how she had fooled their security. What they found terrified them. The genetic modifications were crude by Council standards, but effective. Any human could potentially do what she had done. Suddenly, every migrant worker, every traveler, every non-native resident on Council worlds became suspect. The paranoia spread like a disease. Council species began turning on each other, accusing neighbors of being human infiltrators. The social fabric of the Council started to tear. Jiwan, still technically humanity's ambassador, though the Council had not allowed her to speak in over a year, watched the chaos with grim satisfaction. She had been under house arrest since the war began, monitored constantly but kept alive as a potential bargaining chip. Now junior Council members began secretly visiting her, species that had never wanted this war but had been pressured to vote for it. "We cannot win," one ambassador told her quietly. "Even if we destroy every human world, the cost will collapse our civilizations. The war has already bankrupted 3 member species. Food shortages are causing riots on a dozen worlds. and your infiltrators have made everyone suspect everyone else. Then end the war, G1 said simply. The hardliners will never agree. Thalrex and his faction demand total human extinction. They say anything less is weakness. Then the hardliners will learn what weakness truly looks like, G1 said, because humanity has one more card to play. On Viridian Prime, Thalrex stared at images of his homeworld's ruined shipyards. The destruction was total. 3 orbital platforms gone, thousands of his people dead, and the worst part was knowing that human saboteurs had lived among them, had walked their streets and breathed their air, all while planning this massacre. He called an emergency session of the military council. We must strike at Earth directly, he said. One decisive blow. If we destroy their homeworld, the rest of their colonies will collapse. The defenses around Earth are formidable, one admiral objected. We would need to commit our entire fleet. It would leave our own worlds vulnerable. Then we commit the entire fleet, Thalrex said. We end this war now, whatever the cost. While the council debated their final offensive, human strike teams continued their work. A biological research facility on Cortesh was destroyed, releasing experimental pathogens that killed millions. A major food distribution center was poisoned, causing starvation on 3 agricultural worlds. A data center containing military communication codes was hacked, forcing the council to spend months rebuilding their secure networks. Every attack cost human lives. The teams rarely escaped, but they accomplished their missions, and that was all that mattered. General Wanshik, now elderly and tired from years of coordinating humanity's desperate defense, met with his senior staff. The council is preparing a final offensive, he told them. Every intelligence report confirms it. They will throw everything at Earth in one massive assault. Can we stop them? Someone asked. No, Wanshik said honestly, not conventionally. Our fleet is too small, our defenses too worn down. If they attack with their full strength, Earth will fall. Then what do we do? Wanshik pulled up a classified file, one so secret that even most government officials did not know it existed. We activate Protocol Samson. The room went silent. Everyone knew what Protocol Samson meant. It was humanity's doomsday weapon, the absolute last resort. Are you certain? His second-in-command asked quietly. No, Wanshik admitted, but we are out of options. If they come for Earth with genocide in their hearts, then we will show them what humanity is truly capable of when pushed to the edge of extinction. He typed in his authorization code. 1 of 7 needed to activate the protocol. Around the world, 6 other officials did the same. Deep beneath Earth's crust, ancient systems came online. Systems that had been built in secret over decades, using resources that could have fed millions, but had instead been devoted to the construction of humanity's final revenge. Relativistic kill vehicles, hundreds of them, accelerated to 90% of light speed and aimed at 200 different council worlds. Some were already in transit, having been launched years ago to reach their targets. Others waited in deep space, ready to complete their journeys. A message was prepared and sent to every council world simultaneously. It came from G1, who had finally been released from house arrest as the moderate faction gained power. To the Galactic Council, the message read, You declared war on humanity with the intention of our extinction. You have killed billions of our people. You have burned our worlds. Now you prepare for a final attack on Earth, believing that destroying our homeworld will end us. You are wrong. We have prepared for this moment since the war began. We have sent relativistic projectiles toward 200 of your most populated worlds. They are moving at near light speed. Your sensors will not detect them until seconds before impact. Each one carries enough kinetic energy to cause extinction-level events. If Earth dies, your worlds die. All of them. This is not a bluff. This is not a negotiation. This is the promise of a species that you tried to exterminate. We are persistence hunters. We do not forgive. We do not forget. And if you kill us, we will drag you down with us into extinction. Choose wisely. You have 48 hours to recall your fleet and agree to peace terms, or we will all burn together. The message ended. Across council space, governments checked their deep space sensors and found the human claim was true. The kill vehicles existed. They were real. And there was no way to stop them all. Thalrex read the message and felt something break inside him. He had wanted to save his civilization by destroying humanity. Instead, his pride had brought them all to the edge of mutual destruction. 18 months had passed since the Council issued their ultimatum. What they had expected to be a quick police action had become a grinding war of attrition that consumed ships and lives at a terrifying rate. Captain Doyen stood on the bridge of his destroyer, the Indomitable. His ship was old, built from salvaged parts and scavenged alien technology. It had no shields, no advanced weapons, nothing that would make it a match for even a Council scout ship in a fair fight. But Doyen had no intention of fighting fair. Target acquired, his sensor officer reported. Council supply convoy 6 freighters with 4 escort destroyers. Range, 12,000 kilometers and closing. Doyen studied the tactical display. The Council ships were heading toward one of their forward bases, carrying food and ammunition for their troops. Taking out this convoy would not win the war, but it would make the enemy hungry and short on bullets. Deploy the mines, Doyen ordered. The Indomitable had no torpedo tubes or missile launchers. Instead, it carried hundreds of simple mines, each one little more than a metal sphere packed with explosives and basic guidance systems. They were crude, easily detected by advanced sensors, and would never work against a prepared enemy. But the Council had grown complacent after 18 months of easy victories against human colonies. They did not expect attacks this deep in their own territory. The mines drifted through space, cold and silent. The Council convoy's sensors did detect them, but too late. The first explosion tore through the lead freighter's engines. Then the second mine hit and the third. Within seconds, all 6 freighters were crippled or destroyed. The escort destroyers immediately began scanning for the attacker. They found the Indomitable trying to flee and gave chase, confident in their superior speed and firepower. Doyen let them get close, then activated his ace in the hole. The Indomitable's hull was covered in stealth coating stolen from a Council research facility. It was not perfect, but for a few seconds, it made his ship nearly invisible to their sensors. The Council destroyers lost their targeting lock just as the Indomitable fired its main gun, a railgun that launched chunks of metal at a significant fraction of light speed. No shields, no fancy energy beams, just kinetic force. The tungsten slug punched through the first destroyer's hull like paper. Before the others could react, Doyen had jumped his ship into faster-than-light travel, disappearing before they could reacquire him. Another successful raid, his first officer said with grim satisfaction. How many does that make? Doyen asked. 43 convoys destroyed or damaged in the last 6 months. Doyen nodded. It was not enough. It would never be enough. But every ship they destroyed was one less weapon pointed at human worlds. While Doyen hunted convoys in deep space, Dr. Hyejin worked in a secret laboratory on Earth. She had been a medical researcher before the war, working to cure genetic diseases. Now she designed weapons that would make diseases look merciful. The problem was simple. Humans were losing. The Council had numbers and technology that humanity could not match. Traditional warfare would lead to extinction. So Hyejin and her team were creating something new. The nanoplague is ready, she told the Military Oversight Committee. It targets Viridian biology specifically. Their immune systems will not recognize it until it has already spread through their population. General Wanshik, who commanded Earth's home defense forces, studied the data on his tablet. Fatality rate? 70% of those infected. Permanent organ damage in most survivors. Deployment method? Aerosol release in major population centers. Or we can infect prisoners of war and return them through prisoner exchanges. They will carry it home to their families. Wanshik was quiet for a long moment. Finally, he said, "This is genocide." "Yes," Hyejin agreed. She looked tired, older than her 40 years. "It is also survival. The Council voted 800 to 12 to exterminate us. They bomb our cities from orbit. They kill our children without mercy. Now we must do what is necessary to ensure humanity survives, even if it costs our souls." "Souls are a luxury for species that are not facing extinction," Hyejin said coldly. "Authorized deployment." Wanshik signed the authorization with a hand that shook slightly. Later, he would think about this moment and wonder when humans had become the monsters. But for now, he had a species to save. The nanoplague was released on 3 major Viridian worlds simultaneously. Within weeks, hospitals overflowed with the sick and dying. The Viridian government accused humans of war crimes, of violating every civilized law of warfare. Jiwon, still serving as humanity's representative despite everything, responded simply, You wanted to see what humans do when threatened with extinction. Now you know. But the war was taking its toll on humanity as well. Half of all human colonies had been destroyed. 2 billion people were dead. Earth itself had been struck by long-range missiles, though the planet's defenses had prevented total destruction. In the Council archives, Crixala studied the ancient records with growing horror. She had found more data, more warnings about humans. One passage stood out. They adapt faster than any species we have encountered. Whatever weapon you use against them, they will learn to use against you. Whatever immunity you develop, they will overcome. They are evolution's perfect survivors and they will outlast you. She requested an audience with the Council leadership but was denied. The war had entered a state of total commitment now. Neither side could afford to appear weak by suing for peace. Thalrex had been demoted after the disaster at New Sol, but remained in command of frontline forces. He had lost 3 family members to the war, including his eldest son who died when human saboteurs destroyed a troop transport. "I want every human world burned," he told his officers. "No mercy. No prisoners. They are animals and we will exterminate them like animals." But even as he spoke, he knew the truth. The humans were winning, not through superior technology or numbers, but through sheer stubborn refusal to die. They adapted every weapon the Council used. They hacked into military networks and turned Council ships against each other. They poisoned water supplies and deployed biological weapons and committed acts of terrorism that horrified civilized species. And they never, ever surrendered. A young Council officer named Velthar approached Thalrex one day with a question that had been bothering him. "Commander, what happens if we win?" "What happens when the last human is dead?" Thalrex considered the question. "Then we will have peace, and will we?" Velthar asked. "We have used chemical weapons and biological agents in this war. We have committed acts that we call war crimes when others do them. We have spent resources that could have fed 1 billion people. What will we have become by the time we finish exterminating humanity?" Thalrex had no answer. In deep space, Doyen received a coded message from Earth. New orders. His hands trembled as he read them. The message was simple. Protocol Exodus is active. Ensure the species survives. He gathered his crew and explained what Protocol Exodus meant. Hidden colony ships were being launched from Earth, heading to distant stars that no one had ever explored. These ships carried frozen embryos and DNA samples, along with small crews that would spend their entire lives in transit, never seeing their destination. Even if Earth fell, even if every current human world was destroyed, these ships would ensure that humanity survived somewhere in the galaxy, and someday, maybe centuries from now, those colonies would grow strong enough to return. "We are persistence hunters," Doyen told his crew, "and the hunt never ends." The war ground on through its 2nd year, then its 3rd. Casualties mounted on both sides. Council member species began to question whether exterminating humanity was worth the cost. But they had committed so much, lost so many lives, that stopping felt like betrayal of those who had already died. Crixala finally gained an audience with the full Council. She brought the ancient records and laid them out for all to see. "This is what we face," she said. "A species that evolved to outlast everything. We can kill billions of them, but unless we kill every last one, they will rebuild and remember, and they will hunt us for generations until they have their revenge." "Then we kill every last one," a Council member said. "Can you?" Crixala asked. "Can you search every hidden colony, every deep space station, every ship that might carry human survivors? Can you hunt them as effectively as they have hunted their prey for 100,000 years?" The Council had no answer. The war continued and the galaxy burned. The colony world of New Sol hung in space like a blue and green jewel. Mino stood on the observation platform of the capital city tower, watching the sunrise paint the sky in shades of orange and purple. He had lived here for 15 years, had helped build this world from bare rock and thin atmosphere into something beautiful. 3 million people called New Sol home now. They had farms and schools and parks. They had built a life here. Now 10,000 alien warships filled the sky above them. Sunmi appeared beside him, her military uniform crisp despite the fact that she had not slept in 2 days. "The 4th Fleet sent another message," she said. "They demand complete planetary evacuation within 72 hours. All humans must leave or they will begin bombardment." Minho kept watching the sunrise. "How many transport ships do we have?" 47, Sunmi said. Working at maximum capacity, we can evacuate maybe 300,000 people. Not even close to everyone. Then we refuse. Sunmi nodded. She had expected this answer. I have activated the resistance protocols. Every able person has been armed. Mining charges have been distributed. Civilian ships are being retrofitted with weapons. They have energy shields and plasma cannons, Minho said quietly. What do we have? Determination, Sunmi replied, and the willingness to make them bleed for every inch. High above the planet, Fleet Commander Thalrex studied the reports from his flagship. The human colony had rejected his ultimatum. This was unexpected. Most primitive species surrendered when faced with overwhelming force. It was the logical choice, the smart choice. But these humans seemed incapable of logic. Open fire on the northern continent, Thalrex ordered. Target uninhabited areas only. Show them what our weapons can do, then they will see reason. The first bombardment lasted 10 minutes. Massive energy beams struck empty wilderness, vaporizing forests and mountains. The destruction could be seen from orbit as mushroom clouds rose into the atmosphere. When it ended, Thalrex sent another message to the planet. You have seen what we can do. Surrender now or the next strike will target your cities. Minho watched the destruction through the observation window. He had hoped, foolishly perhaps, that the Council would show mercy. That hope died with the burning forests. He activated the planetary broadcast system, ensuring every human on New Sol could hear him. My friends, he said, our neighbors, our family. Today the Council showed us their power. They think fear will make us kneel. But we are human. We do not kneel. Across the planet, people listen to their administrators' words. In cities and farms, in mines and factories, humans checked their weapons and prepared for what was coming. Begin evacuation of children and non-combatants, Minho continued. Everyone else, you know what to do. We cannot match their technology, but we can make them understand what it means to fight humans. Sunmi coordinated the resistance from the command center. She watched her displays as hundreds of small craft launched from New Sol. Mining vessels, cargo haulers, personal shuttles, anything that could fly. The Council fleet saw them coming and dismissed them as pathetic. That was their first mistake. A mining ship called the Dauntless accelerated toward the Council formation. Its captain, a man named Bongsu, had volunteered for this mission. He had loaded his ship with every fusion core from the mining operation, enough power to fuel a small city. Tell my daughter I love her, Bongsu transmitted. Then he aimed his ship at Thalrex's flagship and pushed the engines to maximum. The Council point defense systems opened fire, but mining ships were built to withstand asteroid impacts. The Dauntless kept coming. At the last moment, Bongsu detonated every fusion core at once. The explosion tore through 3 Council warships and crippled Thalrex's flagship. Alarms screamed across the bridge as systems failed and hull breaches vented atmosphere into space. Thalrex grabbed his command chair to avoid being thrown across the room. Damage report, he shouted. Port side destroyed. Engineering decks 7 through 12 are gone. We have lost 800 crew members. Life support is failing on multiple decks. Thalrex stared at the tactical display in disbelief. A single mining ship, a vessel not even designed for combat, had crippled his flagship. And on the screen he could see dozens more human ships moving toward his fleet. Destroy them all, he ordered. Show no mercy. But the humans were not trying to win a space battle. They knew they would die. They accepted it. What they wanted was to make the Council pay the highest possible price. Over the next 6 hours, 40 human vessels attacked the 4th Fleet. Some carried explosives. Others had modified their engines to overload on impact. A few simply rammed Council ships at high speed, their pilots screaming defiance until the moment of collision. By the time the battle ended, the Council had lost 300 warships and over 50,000 crew members. Every human vessel was destroyed along with their crews, but those crews had bought time for the evacuation transports to escape with over 400,000 civilians. Minho watched the last transport jump to faster than light speed, carrying his wife and daughter to safety. He had stayed behind with 50,000 volunteers, people who chose to fight rather than flee. Thalrex, commanding now from a backup cruiser, stared at the casualty reports. His mandibles clicked together in anger and confusion. How? He demanded. How did they do this? They had no warships, no proper weapons. How did they hurt us so badly? His tactical officer, a young Viridian named Kelvar, studied the battle recordings. Commander, they did not fight to win. They fought to inflict maximum damage before dying. Every pilot knew they would not survive. They accepted death if it meant killing us. Madness, Thalrex said. No civilized species fights this way. The ancient warning, Kelvar said quietly. It said they were persistence hunters, that they do not know when they are defeated. Thalrex turned his attention back to the planet. New Sol still stood, still defiant. Prepare landing forces. We will take this world meter by meter if we must. On the surface, Minho and Sunmi prepared for the invasion. They had rigged every building with explosives. They had hidden weapons caches across the cities. They had turned their beautiful colony into a death trap. They will kill us all, one volunteer said to Sunmi. Probably, she agreed. But we will hurt them so badly that they will remember New Sol for the rest of their civilization. We will become a ghost story they tell their children. We will teach them what it costs to attack humans. When the council troops landed, they found a planet that fought back with everything it had. Humans ambushed them from buildings that collapsed moments later. Children no older than 12 threw explosives and ran into tunnels too small for the aliens to follow. Elderly citizens lured enemy soldiers into buildings wired to explode. The battle for New Sol lasted 4 months. When it finally ended, the city was rubble and ash. Minho died defending the central plaza. Sunmi lasted another week before a council orbital strike killed her and her last squad of fighters. But the council had lost 30,000 soldiers taking one human city. The victory felt hollow. And across human space, on dozens of other colonies, the pattern repeated. Thalrex read the reports and felt something he had never experienced before. Doubt. These humans, these primitive creatures, were fighting with a ferocity that defied all logic. They accepted horrific casualties without breaking. They never surrendered, and the war had only just begun. The massive hall of Olympus Prime Station stretched for nearly a kilometer. Thousands of beings from hundreds of worlds filled the chamber, their voices creating a sound like distant thunder. Above them all, the holographic display showed a small yellow star with 9 planets orbiting it. The third planet glowed with a soft blue light. Jiwan sat in the observation deck, her hands folded calmly in her lap. She was the only human in a room filled with creatures that towered over her, creatures with scales and wings and too many eyes. But she did not show fear. Her people had sent her here to watch and listen, nothing more. The council had made it clear that humans were too young, too primitive to have a real voice in galactic politics. Ambassador Thalrex stood at the center, podium, his forearms spread wide in a gesture of authority. His crimson skin gleamed under the lights and his voice boomed across the chamber without any need for amplification. The matter is simple, he declared. These humans have developed crude, faster-than-light engines. They now spread into sectors that belong to established civilizations. This cannot be allowed. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Jiwan noticed how many species nodded along, how few seemed concerned about declaring war on her people. She had expected this, but it still made her stomach tighten. An ancient being shuffled forward from the archives section. Krixala moved slowly, supported by a hover platform that kept her frail body upright. She had served the council for over 300 years, longer than any other living archivist. Her skin was pale and translucent, showing the network of veins beneath. When she spoke, her voice was thin but clear. I must present evidence to this council, Krixala said. From the first galactic age, before any current civilization rose to power. Thalrex waved a dismissive hand. Ancient history has no bearing on current policy. This history concerns the species you wish to confront. Krixala tapped her control pad, and new images appeared on the holographic display. They were old, corrupted by time, but still readable. These records are over 50,000 years old. They describe a species from Sol 3, a species called humans. The chamber grew quieter. Even Thalrex seemed curious now, though he tried to hide it behind a mask of boredom. Krixala continued reading from the ancient files. They are persistence hunters. They do not have fangs or claws or natural armor. They are weak compared to most predators on their world. But they do not stop. They track prey for days, sometimes weeks, until the prey collapses from exhaustion. They survived ice ages that should have killed them. They survived predators that should have eaten them. They survived diseases that killed most of their population. They always survive. Superstitious nonsense, Thalrex said. These records prove nothing. Perhaps humans existed in the past, but they were clearly conquered or destroyed. They vanished from the galaxy for 50,000 years. No, Crixala said softly. They did not vanish. They were never part of the galaxy. They stayed on their world, alone, until now. The records do not say they were defeated. The records end with a warning. Do not engage the persistence hunters unless you are prepared to fight until one side is extinct. Thalrex laughed and many others joined him. The sound echoed through the chamber like a wave. You ask us to fear a species that builds ships from metal and chemicals? We have energy shields. We have weapons that can crack planets. We have conquered 1,000 worlds. What are humans compared to us? Jiwan stood up then. She had not planned to speak, but she could not remain silent. Ambassador Thalrex, she said in clear, unaccented galactic standard. I ask permission to address the council. Thalrex looked at her with something between amusement and contempt. The human wishes to speak. Very well. Let us hear what primitive wisdom you offer. Jiwan walked to the speaking platform, aware that every eye in the room watched her. She was small, barely reaching the chest height of most species present. Her simple gray uniform looked plain, next to the elaborate dress of the alien ambassadors. But she stood straight and met Thalrex's gaze without flinching. The archivist speaks truth, Jiwan said. My people are persistence hunters. We evolved. On a world where stronger, faster, more dangerous creatures lived, we should have gone extinct. But we learned to outlast everything that tried to kill us. We learned to adapt. We learned to never surrender. Inspiring words, Thalrex said. But words do not win wars. Neither does underestimating your enemy, Jiwan replied. I came here hoping to find wisdom, hoping that advanced civilizations would choose peace over conflict. But I see now that you have already decided. So I will give you the same warning that ancient record gave. Do not start what you are not prepared to finish. Thalrex's expression hardened. Is that a threat? It is a fact, Jiwan said. You have ships and weapons we cannot match. You have numbers that dwarf our population. If you choose war, many humans will die. But I promise you this. We will not surrender. We will not negotiate. We will fight with everything we have, and we will make you pay for every meter of space you take from us. That is what persistence hunters do. The chamber fell silent. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Thalrex activated his voting console. I call for a vote. All in favor of issuing an ultimatum to humanity. Halt all expansion and submit to council authority, or face military correction. The vote was swift. 847 civilizations voted in favor. Only 12 voted against. The motion passed with overwhelming support. Crixala looked at Jiwan with sad eyes. I am sorry, she said quietly. They do not understand what they have done. Jiwan nodded. She felt tired suddenly, tired and sad for what was coming. She returned to her seat and activated her personal communicator, using encryption that the council could not break. The message she sent was simple. They chose war. Activate all protocols. May our children forgive us for what we must do. As the council celebrated their decision and Thalrex began organizing the Fourth Fleet, Jiwan sat alone in the observation deck. She looked out at the stars and thought about her home, about Earth and all the human colonies spread across space. She thought about the war that would consume millions of lives, maybe billions. And she thought about the ancient warning that no one had heeded. The warning that said humans were persistence hunters, that they could not be stopped, only survived. The council would learn the truth of those words, but by then, it would be far too late. For the first time in 4 years of war, he understood what the ancient Admiral Taijin stood in the command center deep beneath Tokyo, watching the tactical displays that showed every ship in human space. The fleet looked pathetic compared to what was coming. Humanity had scraped together every vessel that could still fly, every weapon that could still fire, and it still was not enough. The Council's final solution fleet was approaching Earth. 3,000 warships, The largest armada ever assembled in galactic history. They carried planet-killer weapons designed to crack worlds like eggs, and they were coming with one purpose: to ensure that humanity would never threaten anyone again. Time to weapons range? Tajin asked. 16 hours, his tactical officer replied. 16 hours until the end of everything, Tajin thought. He had been a merchant captain before the war, hauling cargo between colonies. Now he commanded humanity's last defense. How had it come to this? But he knew the answer. Pride. The Council's pride in believing they were superior. Humanity's pride in refusing to submit. Pride on both sides had created a war that no one could win. Status on Protocol Samson? He asked. All kill vehicles are in position. We have confirmed targeting data for 197 Council worlds. 3 targets have increased their orbital defenses enough that we cannot guarantee successful strikes. So if Earth falls, we take 197 civilizations with us. Yes, sir. Tajin felt sick. He had children somewhere in the evacuation fleet, assuming they had survived. What kind of galaxy would they inherit? One where their father had helped murder billions of innocent beings? But then he thought about the children who had already died. The little girl in New Seoul who had thrown rocks at Council soldiers because she had no other weapons. The teenagers who had volunteered for suicide missions because someone had to slow the enemy advance. The babies who had burned when orbital strikes hit civilian shelters. The Council had taught humanity that mercy was weakness. Now they would learn the cost of that lesson. Across Council space, governments were in chaos. The moderate faction had gained enough power to call for an emergency council session. For the first time in 4 years, Ji-won was invited to speak to the full assembly. She stood at the podium where Thalrex had once mocked her warnings. The chamber was less crowded now. Many species had withdrawn from active participation in the war. Others had been so devastated by human attacks that they could barely maintain their own defenses. 4 years ago I stood here and warned you, Ji-won said. Her voice was steady, but her eyes showed the weight of billions of dead. I told you that humans are persistence hunters, that we do not surrender, that we will make you pay for every meter of space you take from us. You did not listen. Now Earth is about to be destroyed, and you believe this will end the war. You are wrong. Humanity has colonies scattered across 1,000 star systems. We have ships in deep space that will survive anything you do to our homeworld. We have frozen embryos and DNA banks hidden in places you will never find. Even if you kill every living human, we will return. But that is not what I came to talk about today. I came to give you one final choice. Pull back your fleet, agree to peace, or activate our doomsday weapons and watch your civilizations die with ours. An ambassador from the Cortesh Dominion stood. You ask us to show mercy when you have shown none. Your people deployed biological weapons against civilian populations. You poisoned our food supplies. You killed millions who had nothing to do with military operations. Yes, Ji-won said simply. We did all of those things. Just as you bombed our cities from orbit. Just as you killed our children. Just as you voted 800 to 12 for our extinction. We learned from the best teachers. You. Thalrex, now demoted to civilian status but still influential among the hardliners, stood from his seat. You threaten mutual destruction? This is insane. No rational species would commit suicide just to take revenge. You still do not understand, Ji-won said. We are not being irrational. We are being human. You tried to exterminate us. We will ensure that if we die, you die too. That is not insanity. That is justice. Krigzala, the ancient archivist, shuffled forward to the speaking platform. She looked even older than before, worn down by years of watching the galaxy tear itself apart. I have studied the human species more than anyone in this chamber, she said. I have read every ancient record, every fragment of data from the first galactic age, and I have reached a conclusion. She activated a holographic display showing DNA structures, behavioral patterns, and evolutionary history. Humans evolved on a death world. Their planet has killed 99% of all species that ever lived there. It has ice ages and supervolcanoes and asteroid impacts. It has predators that make our worst nightmares look gentle, and humans survived it all. They survived because they learned one simple truth. The only way to guarantee survival is to make the cost of killing you too high for your enemies to bear. They call it mutually assured destruction. If you can destroy them, they will ensure they destroy you too. No victory, only mutual extinction. It kept the peace during their nuclear age, and it will keep the peace now. So we have a choice, Krigzala continued. We can proceed with the attack on Earth, kill billions of humans and then watch as our own worlds burn. Or we can accept that we made a terrible mistake 4 years ago and find a way to end this war before we are all extinct. The chamber erupted in argument. Hardliners demanded that the attack proceed, that humanity must pay the ultimate price for their defiance. Moderates begged for peace, showing economic data that proved Council civilization could not survive much longer at war. In orbit above Earth, Tejan watched as the final solution fleet entered sensor range. 3,000 ships, each one powerful enough to sterilize a continent. He thought about his children, about his wife who had died in the second year of the war, about the life he had once lived before everything burned. All batteries prepare to fire, he ordered. We will make them pay for every meter. His officers began the firing sequence. Earth's defense network came online, ancient missiles and rail guns and laser platforms that had been built over decades. It was not enough to stop the fleet, but it would hurt them. Just as the first shots were about to be fired, every communication system in both fleets lit up with an emergency broadcast. It came from the council chamber, from Krigzala herself. Cease fire. Both sides cease fire immediately. The council has voted for peace. Tejan held up his hand, halting the firing sequence. Confirm that message. It is genuine, sir. The council is recalling the final solution fleet. What about our kill vehicles? Are we standing them down? Before anyone could answer, Jiwan's voice came over the command center speakers. Admiral Tejan, this is Ambassador G1. I am transmitting from the council chamber. We have reached a peace agreement. The war is over. Tejan sat down heavily in his command chair. The war was over. After 4 years, after billions of deaths, after humanity had stood on the edge of extinction, the war was over. But the price had been terrible. In the council chamber, the vote had been narrow, 412 for peace, 395 for continuing the war. The moderate faction had won by the thinnest of margins. Thalrex had voted to continue the war. Even after everything, even knowing about the kill vehicles, he believed that humanity should be exterminated. He could not let go of his hatred, his need for revenge for all the Viridians who had died. As the chamber emptied and species began preparing for peace negotiations, Thalrex stood alone. He thought about his son, killed in the war's second year. He thought about the shipyard workers who had died in the human sabotage. He thought about the disease that still ravaged Viridian worlds, the nanoplague that would kill millions more before it finally burned itself out. And he realized that the ancient warning had been right all along. The ultimate price was not extinction. It was not death. The ultimate price was understanding that his pride, his certainty of Viridian superiority, his refusal to listen to warnings, had led to all of this suffering. He had started a war he could not win. He had pushed humanity to the edge of extinction, and in doing so, had brought his own civilization to the brink of destruction. Hundreds of billions had died because he and others like him had been too arrogant to believe that primitive humans could be a threat. That night, Thalrex went to his quarters and performed the traditional Viridian ritual for honor suicide. He left a message for his people. I led us into a war we could not win against an enemy we did not understand. This is the price of pride. Learn from my failure. Krigzala found his body the next morning. She felt sad but not surprised. Some beings could not live with the weight of their mistakes. She arranged for his funeral according to Viridian custom, and filed his final message in the archives. Someday, she thought, future generations would read about this war. They would read about how the Council had ignored ancient warnings, how they had believed themselves superior to a species they did not understand, how they had paid the ultimate price not in extinction, but in learning humility. On Earth, Tejan walked outside for the first time in weeks. The command center had been his prison during the final days of the war. Now he stood in the ruins of Tokyo and looked up at the sky, so,